Elements of the supply chain distribution phase. In the world of international trade, there are too many aspects that can be considered essential to avoid the greatest number of risks or errors in the process. We can even think that all aspects must be treated with attention and detail. Within the process that makes the international trade possible, the supply chain is an essential part to understand how this exchange works. To make it clearer, we need a definition of what a supply chain is. A supply chain is a set of elements that allow companies to have the necessary organization to carry out the development of a product or service, and that this fulfills the main objective, which is to satisfy the needs of the end customer. In short, it is a set of activities aimed at the process of selling a product, taking into account from the design to distribution and direct sales to the customer, with the main objective of having a good product that meets the customer requirements. This logistical process can be divided into several phases or lanes. For more practical purposes, I took what I consider most important to understand the concept. First of all, we have the design. The product or service to be created is defined, and also this will define the entire process and activity of the company. Then we have the demand management. The volume needed and the orders to be had are considered. Then the materials. Raw materials for the production of goods are obtained for supplier. Then we have manufacturing. It is to make the product, to go from raw materials to the finished product. Then the storage. The product begins to be stored, waiting to meet the quality parameters to be finally sold. And finally, but not less important, the distribution phase in which the product is mobilized from a warehouse to the final customers or clients. Broadly speaking, we can divide these phases of the supply chain into three main aspects: the supply, the manufacturing, and the distribution. Each one of these phases are essential to the functioning of the supply chain. Each one has its own elements that make it work, but we are going to analyze those that are part of the last phase, the distribution. As I was saying, in this phase, the finished products go from our warehouses to those of our clients. It may look very simple, but there are some elements that can be forgotten easily. These elements contribute an important part, and the distribution would not work correctly without them. Those are the transport, the most important part of the phase. Talk about transport means how fast or how much can we spend in this switching within air, maritime, and land. Choosing one could mean a major logistical change, since it must be compared and selected according to the characteristics of the product. For example, air transport is more expensive, but has greater security, and sea transport is cheaper but takes longer to arrive as well. It can also be considered an intermodal or multimodal modality, in which several different ways of transport will be used. Also, depending on the type of the product, you should check the possibility of using special containers, such as refrigerated ones. Then we have insurance. It's important to keep safe the products. Today, who thinks about transporting a product without taking insurance doesn't know what it's doing. Then the packaging. Like transportation, this will depend on the characteristics of the product. There are countless types of packaging, changing the material, the shape, and of course, the cost. Finally, we have formalities and legislation. We must understand that the different products that can be transported to other countries must be subject to regulations. Of course, this will depend on the type of product and the country to which we are going to transport it. These regulations can be tariff or not tariff, such as prior permits or certificates of origin. I thought it is possible for a company to take care of these aspects for its own. It is always advisable to go for a logistic agent or a free forwarder to ask for advice or directly for services. In this way, mistakes that are very common in people who have no experience in these aspects are avoided. Having this clear, we can ask ourselves, how important is distribution to a supply chain? It's vital, since it's useless to produce goods if we are going to keep them in a warehouse forever, just as we could not distribute anything if the product didn't exist. It is important that, as company managers, we know about a supply chain. I thought there are people who are dedicated to that and we can hire for their services or consultancies. It is important that companies have people well prepared for everything. A manager with knowledge of logistics, transportation, and international business will be highly sought after by companies around the world.